So this is the largest gland, or rather largest organ in the body, right? So it is the heaviest and the largest organ in the body. It is reddish brown in color, reddish brown in color, and it is located in the upper part of the abdomen, and it is present in the right side, right? Then it is the largest gland of the body. So instead of organ, let's just write down largest gland of the body, right? And it secretes bile, right? What does it secrete? It secretes bile juice. Now this bile juice is secreted by liver and it goes into the gallbladder, right? So this part over here is called as the gallbladder. Now as the name suggests, bladder, so what happens is this is the part which stores the bile juice that is secreted by the liver, right? So the bile juice is stored in the sac called as the gallbladder, right? So what is the function of gallbladder? It stores bile, right? So whatever bile juice is secreted by the liver is stored into the gallbladder, and from here, right, from the gallbladder, it goes into the small intestine. So what is the role of bile in it? So bile juice actually helps in the digestion of fats, right? So it has a role in digestion of fats, right? Now as you can see that why do we need to study about these glands? First, because the secretion that they give out, that is for example bile juice which is given out by the liver, is helping in the digestion of fat, and as you can see the bile juice is secreted into the gallbladder, and from the gallbladder it goes into the small intestine, right? So please remember all these aspects about the liver. It's a very important organ that is present. It's a very important gland that is present in our body, right? Now next we have another organ called as the pancreas. Now pancreas is again a large cream colored gland, right? Cream colored gland. Now where is it located? It is located just below the stomach. Now as you can see in the picture over here, right? So it is liver, this is the liver, right? And over here there is pancreas, right? So this is the magnified image of pancreas, and you can see that how this pancreas, now this is the small intestine, right? It indicates the small intestine. The small part indicates the part of a small intestine, right? Right, and whatever secretion the pancreas is giving out goes into this small intestine, right? So where is it located? It is located just below the stomach, right? What does it secrete? The pancreatic juice, right? So it secretes pancreatic juice, right? And this pancreatic juice acts on carbohydrates. This pancreatic juice acts on carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, right? What do they do is that they change these nutrients into their simpler forms, and these are the simpler forms which are digested or which are absorbed by the body, right? So carbohydrate, fat and protein are comparatively complex structures which cannot be utilized by the body as is, right? So the digestion of these parts is important into their simpler form so that the body can absorb, right, all of these nutrients, right? Now with the help of these secretions, what is happening that the food is partly digested, Now this partly digested food reaches the lower parts of the intestine, and as we know that intestine also secretes its own digestive juices. So complete digestion, right? So complete digestion takes place in this part, right? So complete digestion occurs in the small intestine, where how does it occur is that carbohydrate so how does this complete digestion takes place? Carbohydrate breaks down into glucose, then fats breaks down into fatty acid and glycerol, then proteins break down into amino acids, right? So in this way we see that the carbohydrate breaks down into simpler sugars like glucose, and your fats break down into fatty acid and glycerol, and then proteins break down into amino acids. So you can see how the complete digestion of all these nutrients takes place in the small intestine. Once this happens, the second step and the second function of the small intestine is of the absorption, right? I already discussed how these complex nutrients, that is the carbohydrate, fat and proteins, cannot be digested or absorbed as is and utilized by the body. So that's why what happens is that the simpler forms, right, these simpler forms are easily absorbed by the body. How does this happen? Let's understand. Now, once the absorption takes place and the simpler forms are formed, right? For example, glucose, your amino acids and fats and fatty acid and glycerol is formed. What happens that through the walls of the small intestine, they go into the blood vessels, right? So how exactly this happens is there is a special structure. There is how this absorption happens is because of the special structure called as the villi. So villi is the finger-like projections present in the walls of small intestine. Now students, if you remember, I told you that this is one of the largest part of the alimentary canal, that is 7.5 meter long. And I also told you that we'll discuss why is it so long. One of the major reasons is that it over here in this particular part of the alimentary canal, complete digestion of food takes place, right? So because of the coiled nature of the small intestine, what happens is that when the food keeps on passing through the alimentary canal, that is the part, say for example, when it was passing through esophagus, it came into stomach, it stayed into stomach for some time and the digestion kept on taking place, then it moved into small intestine. Now, in the small intestine, as the food is moving forward, it is getting digested, right? And you can see that liver and pancreas were secreting their digestive juices into the small intestine, and partial digestion took place with the help of those juices. And by the time the food reaches the lower part of the small intestine, the intestinal juices are released and complete digestion takes place. Further, another important part is, as I told you, another important function is the absorption, right? Now, for absorption, you know that larger the surface of the small intestine, larger will be the absorption. So, one thing which increases the surface area of the large and small intestine is the highly coiled nature of this intestine. And another important part is the villi, which increases the surface area. Now, suppose this is your, let's take a simple example that this is your wall of the small intestine, right? Now, as you can see, this is the villi that is present in the wall, right? So if suppose the wall was like this, the surface area was comparatively reduced, but because of the presence of villi, right, these are the structures, finger-like structures, the surface area has increased, right? And this is why villi, the major function, the main function of villi is to increase the surface area so that absorption or maximum absorption can take place, right? So when suppose this finger like projection is like this, it is convoluted, when we will open it, so when we compare it with this structure, we will find that this will be having a longer or a larger surface area, right? This is the importance of villi, that it increases the surface area of the small intestine so that maximum absorption can take place. You can see this over here also, as you can see, right? So this is the villi. Then on these villi further you have the microvilli, right? So these are the structure is something like this. So you can imagine how much the surface area is increasing, right? So it's like this. So you can see that there are microvilli also present. Now over here, these villi have been magnified to show you. The singular of villi is villus, and it is supplied with large amount of blood vessels, right? And these blood vessels assist in the absorption of food, right? So what happens is that suppose this is the surface of the villus, and over here you have the blood capillaries, right? So the food gets absorbed into the blood vessels or the capillaries, and from this it is transported to all the parts of the body, right? So over here you can see from this particular villus what is happening. The nutrient will go into the blood vessels, and from the blood vessels these nutrients will be transported to all the parts of the body, right? Now once it has absorbed all the nutrients, that is the simpler nutrients, for example the amino acids, the simple sugars and your fatty acids and glycerols. Now once the food this nutrient have been transported into different parts of the body, they are used up. Now this usage, right, this particular parts, for example, let's take an example of protein, that these simpler amino acids which have been absorbed by the blood goes into different parts of the body, and over there now complex proteins are made, right? And these proteins help in the functioning of the body, right? So whatever we ate is broken down into simpler substances, and then simpler substances are again made into, say for example, if we talk about amino acids, then these amino acids are then again made into proteins, which will help us in the bodybuilding. Like we already told you that protein is a material which it is a nutrient which helps in the growth of muscles, as well as it has an important role in the repair of the body, right? So once it reaches the different organs or the cells, there they are used to build the proteins or more complex substances which can be utilized by the body, and this process is called as the assimilation, right? So assimilation is the usage, right, of the nutrients that have been absorbed by the body, right? Now this assimilation takes place in the cells. Over here you can also take another example which we talked about in respiration. Which we will talk about in respiration, and what is that glucose, right, which reaches the cell is broken down into in the presence of oxygen and energy, carbon dioxide and water is released, right? This where the glucose is broken down and is utilized by the body. This is an example of assimilation, right, where the body is utilizing the nutrients that have been absorbed by the blood vessels or the villi in the small intestines, right? Now the food which has been digested completely, still there are some parts which are undigested, meaning that there are some things in the food that we eat which cannot be digested, like your protein, carbohydrate or fats. These undigested food parts, whatever it is left, now goes further into the large intestine, right? So now let's talk about the large intestine. So large intestine, although the name is large, but it is not longer in terms of its length. It is actually wider, right? So the length is about 1.5 meter. This shows that it is quite smaller or shorter than the small intestine. But the difference is that it is wider, right? So this is wider than the small intestine. The main function of this particular organ is the absorption of water and some salts from the undigested food that has come into this large intestine. Right, so the undigested food comes into the large intestine from your small intestine, and over here absorption of excess water takes place, right? Excess water takes place, and some important salts are absorbed in this large intestine, right? Now this, whatever is remaining, now the undigested food, right? Undigested food which doesn't have much water and it has very little salt goes into the rectum, right, where it is stored in the form of semi-solid feces, right? So in rectum it is stored as semi-solid feces, right? And after that what happens is, after that this feces is passed out of the body with the help of anus from time to time. Now if you take a look at the diagram, you will find that this whole part is the large intestine, this is the rectum, and this is the anus, right? And from the anus the food that is undigested, right, undigested material is passed out of the body, and this process is known as egestion, right, where the undigested food particle is removed, food items are removed from the body, right? And in this way we see how digestion takes place in human beings, right? So I hope you remember all the parts that are involved in the digestion of human beings, that is beginning from the mouth and up till the large intestine. Also you must have understood that how these parts are connected to one another, and also that this whole alimentary canal is a single canal with different kinds of modifications that are of different length, right?
The food is taken in through the mouth. It is chewed and mixed with saliva in the buccal cavity. Saliva is a digestive juice secreted by the salivary glands. The chewed food enters into the food pipe or esophagus and is then slowly pushed into a bag-like structure called stomach. The stomach also secretes mucus, digestive juices, and hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid kills the bacteria in the food and makes the food acidic. The food then goes into a highly coiled tube called small intestine. The small intestine receives secretions from the liver and pancreas. The liver secretes bile juice, while the pancreas secretes pancreatic juice. The walls of the small intestine also secrete juices which help in further digestion of food. The inner surface of the small intestine has finger-like projections called villi. The villi have extensive network of blood vessels. The digested food is then passed into the blood vessels. The undigested food is passed into the large intestine. It is wider than the small intestine. Excess of water and salts are absorbed here, and undigested waste is passed out of the body through the anus.
Let's talk about a condition which we are all familiar with, but it is quite an intriguing condition. You must have, when you are studying about digestion, you are thinking that maximum water is being absorbed in the large intestine. Then why does diarrhea, right? During this condition, diarrhea, most of the stool that is passed is watery, right? Now, the reason is because that this is a condition which is caused by the infections of some of the microorganisms, right? So, the condition where the person is passing watery stool is known as diarrhea. Also, remember, the watery stool has to be frequent. Like usually, digestion takes place once or twice in a day, right? But when a person is suffering from diarrhea, the person needs to pass the stool very frequently, right? Now, what are the causes of the diarrhea? First of all, it's infections, different kind of infection which might have taken place. Also, food poisoning, right? Food poisoning is one of the reasons of diarrhea. Then, indigestion, right? So, these are certain reasons because of which diarrhea might occur in a healthy person, right? Now, in certain conditions, we see that diarrhea can also be fatal. Why? Because during the diarrhea, there is loss of water and salt, right? So we saw that in the large intestine, the excess water and the salt that was important for the body was being absorbed again. But over here in the case of diarrhea, what is happening? Watery stool, that means loss of water is taking place, and the salt that were being absorbed in the large intestine, that is not happening. So loss of water and salt causes this condition to become severe and severe, and in certain cases it can also be fatal, right? So what should we do? First of all, this condition should not be neglected. If you find that, especially in children, if you find that the watery stools are really frequent, one should never avoid the condition. You should always address it, right? First of all, the one thing is that you should not avoid it. The second thing is giving the patient ORS. What is ORS? ORS is the oral rehydration solution, right? Now, as the name suggests, what is it? You are giving the patient water that has been removed from the body because of diarrhea. So it is oral rehydration solution. That means in water you are putting sugar, you are putting some salt, and then you are mixing it and you give it to the patient, right? So this is the oral rehydration solution which helps in maintaining the water and salt balance in the body. Before you even go to the doctor, you can prepare this ORS solution and you can give it to the patient. Remember to use boiled water so that suppose if the infection has taken through water, it can be avoided. So boil the water, cool it down, then you add the sugar and salt, and then you give it to the patient. Keep on giving it, and then you should definitely consult the doctor if the watery stool is quite frequent and also it is accompanied by vomiting, right? So in India, we see this condition is quite common because of the unhygienic conditions that is prevailing, and usually it is seen in the small children around us, right? So in this way, students, we saw that how the digestion in human body is taking place, and we also talked about the condition that is quite common in our country, that is diarrhea.